If you grew up in the 30s or 40s, chances are you were hooked on comic books. Smack dab in the middle of the golden age when Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Captain America first started hitting shelves, these colorful collections caught the eyes of kids everywhere and became the go-to medium for companies to make a quick buck. At a time when superheroes were literally a dime a dozen, every passing month new publishers would pop up hoping to cash in on the craze, and the major brands of the day were more than happy to pay for the right to plug their products. From air rifles to telescopes, from music lessons to jewelry, it wasn't that uncommon to see ads for anything and everything a growing guy or gal might fancy. But one particular promo remains shrouded in mystery. Today, we're cracking the case of Kooba Cola, the soft drink that never existed. It's kinda hard to believe, but even 100 years ago, the US was waging the war between Coke and Pepsi. Soda pop was big business. Following the Great Depression of the 1930s, Pepsi Cola looked to be on the ropes after filing for bankruptcy, but the company quickly reorganized and planned a resurgence by introducing a new 12-ounce bottle at only 5 cents. With a hot new slogan and an unbeatable price point, the brand began to rebound, forcing competitor Coca-Cola to rethink their strategy, and even smaller regional and local brands threw their hat into the ring too. About this time, a strange new company called Kooba Cola began running ads in the publications of popular comic company Fox Feature Syndicate, offering a 12-ounce bottle of their own at the same price point, but with a healthy dose of vitamin B1 stirred into the mix. Kooba seemingly commissioned an all-out marketing blitz in the comic world, even going so far as to offer kids fun prizes for turning in enough Kooba Cola bottle caps. Fans of Blue Beetle, Fantastic Comics, Mystery Men, and more had a wide array of Kooba coupons and Kooba comics to add to the fun, and there was even talk of sales going to help the USO. The only problem? Kooba Cola was a lie, and Fox Feature was in on the take. So let's back up a bit and talk about this so-called comic book syndicate. Started in the late 1930s by one Victor Fox, the company eventually encompassed over 80 different publications from the years 1939 to 1951, most of which are, let's just say, less than stellar. Victor Fox is sort of an infamous character in the history of American comic books. He moved from England to the United States as a kid in 1898, and by 1929 was living and working in New York City. And by working, I mean committing mail fraud. Victor Fox spent his early days as a con man, routinely starting random companies, selling securities for them, and then filing for bankruptcy as needed. It's hard to know just how many different scams he had going in his youth, but he was eventually arrested for illegal boiler room stock trading. By the time the 30s rolled around, he managed to find work as a bookkeeper at National Periodicals, the company that would eventually become DC Comics. Legend says that on a random work day, Fox decided to take a peek at the sales figures for the company's comics division, and seeing that they had skyrocketed thanks to Superman, he promptly quit his job and spent the rest of the afternoon on the horn putting various pieces together to start his own comic company. He leased office space in the same building as National Periodicals, placed an order for a 64-page magazine from an up-and-coming comic book packager, and then hired a slew of struggling art students to begin designing the comics, paying them proverbial peanuts to draw up a handful of stories. Less than 6 weeks later, his slapped-together comic book hit shelves, and Fox Feature Syndicate was born. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but Victor Fox took things to a new level, his Wonder Man character being a blatant ripoff of the Man of Steel. Almost immediately, DC filed a lawsuit, but by the time the court handed down a decision killing the character for good the following year, Fox Feature Syndicate had already created a totally new lineup of characters to play with, and sported a readership of 1 million strong. Most of Fox's comics were hit or miss. While he occasionally teamed up with real heavy hitters like Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, the creators of Captain America, more often than not he would hire inexperienced artists to draw up different magazines and then just refused to pay them, knowing that they were too broke to afford a lawyer. As well, Fox would only work with the cheapest printing and distribution companies, so in addition to rough illustrations, the comics themselves were generally flimsy and poor quality. Not that he really cared, because he didn't even pay the printers half the time, and he skirted around the system by filing for bankruptcy 4 different times, despite selling an untold number of magazines, perhaps the most memorable of which was the Blue Beetle, which now ironically is actually owned by DC. The hero featured prominently in the old company's lineup, even having a short-lived CBS radio drama, which delighted kids for all of 4 months. As the publication gained a reputation for its lackluster quality, Victor Fox started finding it difficult to sell advertising space in his pages, but as 1941 arrived, he had one last perceived ace up his sleeve. What if the products advertised also happened to be his? Fox hatched a plan to create a new soda company, Kooba Cola, the world's newest and best tasting soft drink. Featuring the product in his entire line of comic books with clever slogans, bottle cap cash-ins, and a Popeye the Sailor-like superhero mascot, the make-believe mogul sought to drum up consumer demand. Kooba Cola even became a sponsor of the Blue Beetle radio show to lend it credibility, but like most of his other business pursuits, Kooba Cola was a complete fabrication. There were no 12-ounce bottles of delicious vitamin B1 goodness. Coupons were always conveniently expired and effectively worthless. Kids who turned them in at supermarkets were met with blank faces, and those cool toy prizes were a complete fantasy too. The ads were total deceptions. In truth, Victor Fox hoped that all of those advertisements would drum up demand for a Kooba Cola so much that he could just sell the brand name to a real soft drink company for a hefty sum. Just like the schemes of his youth, Kooba would be nothing more than a shell company, propped up by a false sense of value that could be dumped onto somebody else when the time was right. But despite his fiendish efforts, the frenzy that the publisher hoped for never materialized. The soda companies of the world couldn't care less about the brand, and after a year of relentless promotion, Fox seemed to just give up on the idea, letting it drop into obscurity. The soda was never produced, and just like that, Kooba Cola fizzled out. All that remains of the brand is a bunch of scrapped promotional material, but you know something? I've never really been one to let go of a bad idea, so I'm happy to announce that Kooba Cola is set to make a triumphant return in my next feature film, Atlas, the animated movie. And hey, if you can't wait till then, I might have made some merch. One of Victor Fox's most unappreciated titles of 1941 was The Spider Queen, featuring Shannon Kane, one of the Golden Age's few leading ladies. Armed with super strong spiderweb shooting bracelets, her limited run series never caught on, despite the fact that an eerily similar guy in red and blue tights would steal the limelight several decades later. That really never sat right with me, and so recently I have reworked the character and her story into a fast-paced revenge thriller, which is out right now in fine online bookstores. You can visit the link in the description to pick up your copy today and jump into the world of the Spider Queen. I know what you're thinking, Austin. Did you really put together a video about an old ad just so that you could do a new ad of your own? That would be ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as putting an ad at the end of that ad. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website. Got a creation to show off or a business idea that you want to bring to life? They've got everything that you need to get started. Start with one of their best-in-class website templates and then use their new Fluid engine to customize it just how you like it. Use member areas to host exclusive video content. And if you've got something to sell, their online storefront makes it easy. Head to squarespace.com to start a free trial today. Give it a shot. If you like the experience, and I think you will, then when you're ready to launch your site in full, head over to squarespace.com/Austin McConnell to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.